I'm going to call the Ways and Means Committee to order. We don't quite yet have a quorum, but would like to start on time. We're going to start with Representative Urdahl's bill. He was just here. Welcome to the committee, Representative Urdahl. As soon as we have a quorum, we'll officially start the meeting, and I will move your bill. But members, we will actually be working on the House language, but we have the Senate file in committee. So in your packets, you have the House file. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members.
If you'd like to explain your bill, Representative Urdahl.
Thank you. This is the legacy bill and funds from the constitutional amendment. As you know, there are 4 categories that are funded. 3 are done on a biennial basis. Water is 1, arts, history, culture 2, and then parks and trails the 3rd one. Outdoor heritage, or basically the Lessard-Sams recommendations, are done annually. And if sales tax collections exceed forecasted amounts, we have supplemental funding of the other 3 categories. We have a small amount for about $8,115,000 this year. We've also placed more money on the bottom line from the end of last session. Our percent in reserve ranges from 3.2 to 6.2%. And the reporting procedures we instituted last session are working well and are yielding the sought-after transparency. In Article 1 of the bill, first we have total appropriations of $97,420,000 from the Outdoor Heritage Fund, and that's divided into several categories. Prairies get $24,640,000. Forests, $10,300,000. Wetlands, $31,140,000. And Habitat, $31,120,000. In the clean water portion, $4,200,000 to the Board of Water and Soil Resources, $2,200,000 to the University of Minnesota for aquatic invasive species appropriation. We have a change under the Parks and Trails Fund. We didn't really do any funding, just a change to the Metropolitan Council, which extends the availability of a previous Parks and Trails Fund appropriation for Metropolitan Parks and Trails by 1 year. In Article 4, Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, $1,715,000. We did some things there with a film production program. $900,000 to the Minnesota Historical Society, $800,000 of which was money that had been turned back from last year for projects that hadn't been completed. So that $800,000 to the Historical Society is money from last year that essentially is being reappropriated. But basically, in a quick synopsis is how we are funding the bill.
Thank you, Representative Urdahl. I'm sorry, members, I was misinformed. In your packets is the first unofficial engrossment of Senate File 2493, which is the House language. So, and I don't believe we yet have a quorum. Are there any questions for the bill author? Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Urdahl, you mentioned something about the Historical Society of $800,000 coming back into the fund, and then, but it says in Section 4 of Article 4 that you're adding an additional $900,000 on top of the $800,000.
No.
Representative Urdahl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Anderson, no, that $900,000 is not additional. $100,000 is additional. and the 100,000 is from the is for the Civil War Task Force to fund the sesquicentennial of the Civil War. So it's 800,000 that came back, and then another 100,000 that is new.
Well, then it's written wrong. But thank you.
Any other questions? Well, members, we don't have a quorum yet, so we can't take any official action. Representative Urdahl, I apologize for that, but so that the committee can continue to work, if you might, we'll move on to Representative Abeler to explain his bill, and when we have a quorum, we'll circle back and take official action on yours. My apologies.
Thank you.
That because the stalled car sold things up on 94.
All right,
I mean,
good
that
to
may,
know.
that may be a contributing factor, along with the lane that's closed for construction or putting down sod on the one side, and there's a stalled car on the other side.
All right, thank you for that.
That backs things up.
That it would. Welcome to the committee, Representative Abeler, if you'd like to explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't see Representative Huntley here yet. This is the first Human Service Omnibus that I recall being voted out by unanimous vote from the committee. There are some management in the disability side which will hopefully generate some savings. We've tried to there were a few problems we had. We had to deal with bed closures, which we are addressing that. We had to deal with I'm just going blank here. We had a few clinkers from the last year's bill. And just to announce, in the paper today, the PCA settlement came out that affirmed the last year's bill. I'm working on actually finding a way to soften that impact, which I don't have. It just came out, so I don't have the ability to do that. But I'd like to try to reduce that to 10% instead of 20%. And I think there's money available for that, which I can try to tackle on the floor, perhaps, or in conference. There's some. We're trying to find a way to soften some of the 10% rate cuts to some places that were vulnerable to concentrations of residents that the department wasn't aware of. There's a lot of planning going on here and more reform. Probably the biggest item in this bill is allowing people to relocate into apartment houses and the likes up to 25% of the density. That was previously limited to 4 beds. We grandfather everybody in who has a place with a greater concentration, but this will give a chance to move people into more independent settings and actually get better quality of life and actually save money in the future. So I'm kind of excited about that. There is an amendment, which I can't move yet, right? Do we have a quorum?
We do.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'll move House Bill 2294.
If I might,
Okay.
I'd like to call to order the Ways and Means Committee. Mr. Smith will note the roll. Representative Davids moves approval of the minutes from March 19th. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Then Representative Abeler, if you'd like to move your bill.
Okay. Oh, yes, if I'd like to move House Bill 2294 to the General Register.
All right. And then you wanted to bring up which amendment?
The A102 is mine, Madam Chair. Do I have other ones too? Okay. And so a lot of it is technical. The significant parts, there's some managed care contracting language. We were able to increase the dental services, including house calls. The fiscal note came in favorably. There's some critical access dental service for some of the disability people. That was a nice thing we could do. We are we solved there's a few problems we've solved here. We we took some money out of the state government special revenue fund for 5 home care inspectors, which actually wasn't tenable. So we've asked the department to come back rather with they can hire who they can that they can afford, which is agreeable to them, which might be 1, and they can come back with a plan to increase that. That's our compromise, which made a lot of sense. Maybe Mr. Berg wants to talk about the money amendments here. But it's we can't say anything short, Madam Chair and members, It takes 6 pages to say hello in our department. There's a work in progress here, which I would like to point out. There was a immediate bed closure thing in last year's bill. This is probably the most important part of this bill, which is going to be worked through by the time it's all done with conference. We took $1.3 million in savings for closing some beds immediately. That was problematic, and so that immediate bed closure is gone. Instead, there's a way to manage those beds at a statewide level. The savings currently taken for that is $4 million. That may not be a tenable number, but it's a number that suits for today. I'm working with the department to find ways to manage that within what they think can happen, and we'll balance the money as it goes along. The bill is balanced today. The general fund spending is a little over $1 million. Just to remind members, when I was here last year, the target in this bill was minus $1.863 billion, a target no one's ever had to hit. Now, if you take the $1.863 billion and put 3 zeros, we're working in the last digit. We're working on areas that weren't even round-off areas almost. And so we spent some TANF money on TANF-eligible projects, some homeless services. The general fund spending in the bill, I believe, is a net zero, but it includes $1 million for Merck. And there's the other big item in the bill we should be aware of is a contingent payment delay. That's the other big thing. There's a 1.67% rate cut, which was contingent on a waiver being approved. The commissioners out in Washington today arguing for that waiver. There was some work done in 2009 by the DFL House and Senate and the Republican Governor Plenty that they would reduce services to low-needs individuals. That was barred, and it saved some amount of money. And that was barred because of ERA and I think some ACA MOE, but certainly ERA, and put off till 2014. By reverse consensus, the GOP houses and the DFL governor also agreed that that would be sensible, and we put in a contingent rate cut, which they thought would be well approved soon. The waiver did not go in October. It went in February due to internal and other external challenges. And so to avoid a 1.67% rate cut to every home and healthcare long-term care provider except nursing homes, I built in a contingent payment delay, which would occur only if they don't get the waiver and only up to the amount that they've lost, which is $2 million a month. So if every month after May 1st, there'd be a shift, a delay, it's a shift, a delay of payment in June of next year into the July 1st. Compared to some shifts, which I have not liked a lot of, this one actually is based on something we tried to do that there's actually a fix for. And instead of just balancing the budget, it's a way to solve a problem. And so it's a terminal project. My estimation, if I had to guess, would be $4 to $6 million net. The tails show $22 million from this function, which I hope we never get to. If they can get it by May 1st, which is still possible, given the intention of the governor and all the leadership on both sides of the aisle, then there'd be no shift and no payment delay. And so that's that's pretty much the bill, Madam Chair. And that's generally the amendment. Is anything else I should call the light here?
Okay, members.
So I'd move the amendment with that then, Madam Chair.
Are there any questions on the A102 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Amendment's adopted. All right, Representative Abeler, there's also a number of other amendments in our packet.
Okay, none of the amendments are mine, Madam Chair.
All right, does anybody want to claim any of the additional amendments? Representative Lanning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move the A104 amendment.
All right. Members, Representative Lanning moves the A104 amendment. If you'd like to explain it to the committee, please.
What this amendment does is to clarify the intent of the bill relative to the whole issue of dealing with financial literacy. And as of June of this year, the Ladder Out of Poverty Task Force will sunset, and we're right in the middle of working with financial institutions on addressing the issue of financial literacy. And so we're intending here to continue a legislative task force to work on that issue along with building assets to help people get out of poverty. So it's merely a clarification of intent.
Right, members, any question on the A104 amendment?
Madam Chair, I
Representative
consider
Abeler?
it friendly.
All right. Any questions? Representative Westrom.
Madam Chair, just clarifying, Representative Lanning, the task force is continuing or just a facet of the task force? I wasn't clear on how you explained it. The ladder out of poverty is sunsetting, but a piece of what they're still working on is continuing?
Representative Abeler. Or, I'm sorry, Representative Lanning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Westrom, the task force that's currently operating has been for the last 2 years, sunsets at the end of June. And because we're right in the middle of discussions, working with financial institutions on addressing the issue of financial literacy, we want to continue a task force that would be working with them on that issue and a couple of other things that come out of the Ladders Out of Poverty Task Force.
Any other questions on the A104 amendment for Representative Lanning? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Amendment's adopted.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
just want to address one more concern that Representative Huntley's handout reminded me of. The bill has a de minimis amount of controversy in it. One of those is this thing he brings up here. I don't know if he's here yet. There. Hi, Tom. About this medical record release thing. I'm very concerned about some potential gaps in privacy because of how we do electronic records. A number of people in the audience and in the hallways are concerned about the impact on emergency services and research. I'm working with them. I'm working with the department. It's my view that the governor is not interested in me jamming him on stuff, and that I don't have a lot of leverage on that. So if at the end of the cycle of conference time that I cannot work on an agreement, this provision will be out. But I hope that there's a way to call attention to it and resolve the privacy concern with the functionality. So I understand this handout. I understand the topic. So, and I've talked to at least 12 people in the hallway about it, and they're all interested in helping me solve the problem, I hope. So.
All right, Representative Huntley.
Basically, Madam Chair and members, this part of the bill would stop all record transfers in the state, which would violate federal law. And it's opposed by the hospital associations, it's opposed by the MMA, it's opposed by a lot of the big delivery systems. Basically, it would stop all transfer of any records of individuals so that some other provider could look and see what happened to this individual at another location. So it's opposed by the departments. We do not have yet a definitive statement from the governor, but I think that this would put this bill in jeopardy if it stays in there. I was going to move to take it out, but if Representative Abeler wants to continue to work on this and get an agreement, then I guess I won't move to take it out.
Madam Chair.
Representative Abeler.
And Representative Huntley, you heard my comments about it. Let me just say for the committee's sake, the concern I have. Currently, in 2007, this was passed over my objections at the time. This has to do with record locators and electronic records. And under the current law is now that if you go to a doctor, if you go to any doctor, that people with access to the system, which is providers, many of them, tens of thousands of them, have a number and they can access it for appropriate reasons, we are told. And so they can know that you went to a clinic. They can know if you went to the Red Door Clinic, if you had back surgery, if you went to the Psycho Help You Get Over Your Mental Illness Clinic, which is, that already is being known. What came in there, you can get those records under 3 criteria. One is if you have a wet signature, if you're allowed by law like workers' comp to get it, or if you say you have a release. That's the affirmation part, which I am attempting to amend. And the problem with that is people lie. And even though there's safeguards in the system and they have to put their provider numbers in, they're not audited to know who has done this, and the person does not know that their records were accessed. So 2 years after the fact, you could find out that somebody accessed your records, and if you're a prominent political figure or just a regular citizen, that seems to be a problem to me. And so I understand the concerns that Huntley has, and I share them. But I think that part of the answer is limiting who has access to this affirmation part. Research places, emergency services, people who are care coordinating, et cetera. And so I may get somewhere on it, I may not, but I'm just glad that I'm trying to work on it. And because I don't think, I mean, the people, lobbyists come in and say, oh, this is bad for my principal, the hospital can't get records in an emergency. Okay, well, what about your records, Miss Lobbyist? What about people knowing about the status of your PAP test and knowing about your health and your cancer that you have? And this is, as more and more records go electronic, it's going to be an issue. So I think there's a way to divide this so that the amount of data you want to get out for useful purposes is there. And maybe Mr. Huntley can help me accomplish that. So I'm hoping he'll work with me to address this concern. I know he doesn't want data running around either. But I know he wants to help research happen. So I'm trying to build on that positive note, and I appreciate his not moving it today. And he has my word, I'll keep working on this. And at the end, if it doesn't fly, it doesn't fly. So.
Thank you. Representative Huntley.
Well, Madam Chair and members, some of you know I spent the night in Regents Hospital in February. And I would certainly like for Regents Hospital to contact my records in Duluth and find out what they need to know about my medical record. This bill, as it's written right now, would prevent them from doing that.
And point taken, Madam Chair.
All right, I also have a A105 amendment and A12 857 amendment. Representative Rukavina.
Madam Chair, I have the 857 amendment, and I'll try to be brief, and I've talked to Representative Abeler and Gavel about this. Some friends of mine, longtime friends, their son, who now lives in Representative Huntley's district, bought a house on December 3rd of 2007. Unbeknownst to him, the Department of Human Services put a lien on the house that was filed on November 30th with the St. Louis County Recorder. In that 3-day time period, nobody caught this lien. The young kid from a good, hardworking family pays the daughter of the people he bought the house from. She uses the money like St. Louis County told her to and pays her parents' nursing home expenses. But all of a sudden the kid goes to refinance and take advantage of lower rates in December of 2010 and finds out there's a $72,000 lien on a house he paid $94,000 on. The abstract company was supposed to take the money and tell the daughter that she had to pay human services or whomever for the costs at the nursing home that her mother had already incurred. The title company didn't tell her this. The title company's bankrupt. The poor kid has nowhere to turn. They've tried every legal means, and the Department of Human Services told me the only remedy is for you to pass a special law. So I'm doing what I do best in Ways and Means and passing a special law for this kid who doesn't deserve this. And Mr. Lulich from the Department of Human Services drafted it so tight, members, that it will apply to nobody else in the world. So with that, I would appreciate your support. If Representative Huntley wants to comment on it, Representative Gottwald also can comment on it, and Representative Abeler, but I'd appreciate your support because this kid doesn't deserve this.
Madam Chair.
Representative Abeler.
Well, I'm very sympathetic to this. I told Representative Rukavina I'd try to help him get this resolved. There may be a cost to it, and this is really frustrating to me that this sort of thing can happen. I was just talking to the department here who's here to comment on it. I think they have some concerns they want to tell you about. So. But I'm so sympathetic to the circumstance, and anyway, so I'll turn it over to the department.
Welcome to the committee. If you'll state your name for the record, please.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Angela Urbanek. I am the acting manager and staff attorney in the benefit recovery section at the Minnesota Department of Human Services. The area that I work in is responsible for placing medical assistance liens on property of recipients who are receiving care in a nursing facility. And I don't have any prepared testimony related to this language, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right.
Madam Chair, perhaps you could comment on the cost. Is there a cost to this in this biennium or the next one?
Yes,
Ms.
Madam Chair, my understanding is that the fiscal impact of this language has been provided.
Madam Chair, if I could
Representative Rukavina.
If I could clear it up, the amount of the lien at the time was $72,603. The kid paid $94,300 for the house. But if you, ma'am, are in charge of the benefit recovery system for the Department of Human Services, this young gentleman received no benefit. He didn't get a benefit. He bought a house. He had nothing to do with the lien. Somebody missed it in a 3-day period there. And this language was drafted by an attorney at the Department of Human Services, Mr. Lulich, who told me his name was Lulich, but I corrected him because I knew it was a Croatian name and said it's Lulich. And he said, "You're right. How did you know that?" I can tell you the rest of that story, too. and then I got him to draft this nice, specific language for me. So sometime in the future, maybe 30 years from now, whenever this kid decides to sell this house, the state could recover a $72,000 lien against a kid that had nothing to do with the lien. And members, I think all of us here realize the absurdity of this situation, and we are lawmakers. At times, we have to pass a law for our constituents. And with the amount of money, that this state spends every year to quibble about a $72,000 amount that this poor kid had nothing to do with, seems ludicrous to me. So I would appreciate your support, and I know Representative Abeler and Representative Gottwald and everybody at the table supports me on this.
Madam Chair,
Representative Abeler.
not to drag this out too long, I'm just bargaining over here already. Which is what we do. The state cost is some $35,000, which is half of the 72. It's $36,000 or whatever. Given that we manage our budget in billions, it's funny we have to quibble about $36,000, which is a round-off error on my bill, although we tracked it down to the nearest $5,000. And it's my advice to the committee that we take this today and just give the Representative Rukavina the chance to have a discussion with the department with a moving amendment. It's going to go to the floor. We'll have to find $36,000 internal to the bill and balance it by the time we get to the floor to pay for that, which I will do every effort to accomplish. And maybe we need a more overall policy about such a thing, that you can't put one on which then blows up the whole money. And that's my suggestion to members, and Representative Rukavina can work on this and try to find this. This seems like an injustice, and the guy didn't buy title insurance. Probably should have.
No, he did.
We did buy title insurance.
They went bankrupt.
Oh, the title insurance went bankrupt. So
Actually, they got closed down by Commerce, but that's a longer story.
that's a different committee, Representative Rukavina. That's my advice, Madam Chair, if you would allow that, and I'll take your advice.
Representative Gottwald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Rukavina and I have spoken about this and would love to help him out. I have to say, Representative Rukavina, you do a heck of a job advocating for your constituents, so I got to give you that. My one concern, Madam Chair and members, is the potential for precedent here. This is a situation that involved a young man and a failed title company, and it almost suggests a lawsuit rather than legislative action specifically for one person. And the concern here is that every single time we've got this kind of a lien going on and somebody doesn't get made whole on it, the legislature is going to be back doing this not only for Representative Rukavina's constituent, but everybody else's who's in a similar situation. So I'm sympathetic. I'm glad Representative Abeler is willing to work with him on it. I hope we can solve it for him, Representative Rukavina, but I do have that genuine concern in terms of state policy on these kinds of matters.
Yeah.
Representative Westrom.
Madam Chair, to Representative Rukavina, I'd like to understand the fact situation a little bit better, but so you're saying the title company went broke or the title insurance company went broke?
Representative Rukavina.
Mr. Chair, Representative, Westrom. It says here that there was a number of different ways to try to solve it, but it said in the end that the title insurance company, I believe, let me find it here. I'm looking on this letter. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it's the title insurance company.
And Representative Rukavina, I'm thinking along with Representative Gottwald. I mean, this situation is going to come again. I mean, that's in the legal world. The proper due diligence is you literally call up to the courthouse before you close to find out if there's been anything filed, even since the title update. And I'm guessing that sounds like it was missed here. I'd be surprised if a title insurance company has went broke. They have so few claims and typically have to have reserves. My guess is the title company might have went broke, but if he bought title insurance, there should still be a claim against him. But actually, there should probably be a claim against the party that sold it to him because they owe him a marketable title. What did they do with the money, Representative Rukavina? And that's probably who the action should be against.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Representative Westrom, the problem is that the daughter didn't do anything wrong, and it says the daughter was told by the county to spend the money on taking care of her parents in the nursing home, which she did. But the county won't tell us what she did with the $94,000 other than that they implied that she spent it on their spend down. The state won't tell us anything because they're not involved, so we're caught in the middle. And you are right, it was a company named Scenic Title and Abstract handled the closing, which occurred at its office. And in that 3-day period, it was missed, and when he went to try to solve this, they had been put out of business by the Department of Commerce for a number of different, I guess, inadequacies on their part, but I don't want to get into that. Right. I don't know how something like this, that's this specific as this bill is written by the Department of Human Services, could happen again in the future. And I guess if it does, each legislator will have to make their case to the body. I'm trying to make my case today, and I don't think anybody at the table thinks what happened to this young gentleman is right, and he did everything right. He did everything. There was a title insurance company too from which carried title insurance on the mortgage of the lender bank, but the lender bank says, well, it's not our problem. So the only problem here is for a kid who bought a house for $94,000 and did not know and did everything right that there was a $72,000 lien, and the people, the family who got the $94,000 evidently used the money in the way that St. Louis County told them they were supposed to spend it down for her parents in the nursing home. So the only problem here is the insurance. One company went out of business, and there's nobody to go after in a lawsuit anywhere. We've tried everything, and our only means left, and I talked to Mr. Lulich at the department, was to pass a special bill. And that's why I'm here, members.
Well, Madam Chair,
Representative
Representative Rukavina, I empathize for your constituent. I do think his action should be against the seller of the property, and that's where he should be recovering. I understand, and I could even consider going along with it here, but this is going to come again. That's why you file liens. That's why you have to do title checks before you close property. And the party selling the property owes you a marketable title upon transfer, and that's what a warranty deed is. And the action should be against the party he bought it from. They should have known about the lien or checked on the lien. And so I would give him that advice too, Representative Rukavina.
Madam Chair.
Representative Rukavina.
I appreciate that. Representative Westrom, you were a lot more sympathetic when you weren't an attorney.
Madam Chair.
Representative Abeler.
There's a lot of bills. People can vote how they want. It's my view on this that an amendment in a committee does not equal a law that's passed. And so maybe there's danger in a precedent, and I didn't want to turn this into the Civil Law Committee. I had enough visits there this year, and it was very nice being there on multiple bills. But if the members are willing, I would like to work with Representative Rukavina on this matter, and you can decide if you want that to occur or not. I can find $36,000 in the bill to balance the fiscal by the time it gets out of here. If you need it today, I can reduce something by $36,000. But I don't know if the final answer involves any money, or if I don't think this is the amendment that's going to become law. But I think this will at least get the department working with the representative and his constituent and maybe the lady and address a gap in our system, and that's what I like to do. So.
Well, Representative Abeler, I'm a little concerned because we don't know what it costs. There's no dollar amount associated with this. You need to have your bill balanced, and while certainly I'm confident that you'll be able to find money within your bill, given the size of your bill, et cetera, we like to know how much things cost before we pass them out of Ways and Means. It'd be and certainly we have 3 more members that'd like to talk, but I'm a little concerned that we would put amendment on a bill, not have a cost associated with it, nor have it paid for. I don't want to set that precedent in Ways and Means as chair of Ways and Means. Representative Khan.
Well, Mr. Chairman, first of all, the idea that one ought to go to the legal system to take care of this is just really off the wall. It is not possible that this lawsuit, through all of its ramifications, would cost less than $36,000. And so the thought that we would do it, why don't you just, there are a whole bunch of big rounded off numbers in this bill. 30 here, I'm looking on page 96. There are a whole bunch of numbers that end in 000. Why don't you pick any one of them at random and diminish them by 36,000, and your bill will be balanced, and and it will be like pennies off those grants. I mean, this is just, I'm not, I've been trained on things like the Legislative Audit Commission and the Pension Commission to be as hard-hearted and nasty as possible. But it's usually for amounts more than 36,000. So I would just suggest that we allow staff to I just turned to page 96 of the bill, and cut any of those numbers down by 36. They'll be as accurate as they are in the bill, I assure you. And let pass Representative Rukavina's amendment and let it go on. And you put in an amount of cost of up to 36,000.
Representative Khan, you said you had to be trained to be hard-hearted. Representative Rukavina one day a number of years ago told me that if he ever needed a heart transplant, that he wanted mine because mine had never been used.
I was only kidding back then, Madam.
Representative Rukavina.
You got a good memory. That's why you're an elephant.
Representative Downey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got to argue with Representative Westrom against this. I mean, I've had people in my office within the last 2 months that got ripped off by an adoption agency that had equity in a co-op that got converted to public debt. And, I mean, I'd suggest a recess because I'll go draft bills for all those to compensate my constituents as well. There's just no way we can start this precedent. This bill does not address a general circumstance that seems to be possibly the case. It's just a direct payment to somebody. I did a quick check, and Scenic Title and Abstract appears to still be in business. So there's just no way we can pass this, Madam Chair.
Oh, Madam Chair.
Representative Rukavina.
Representative Downey, I didn't mean anything I said about your dad the other day, by the way. Floor. But that is not true. That Scenic has been dissolved or whatever by the Department of Commerce, and I will go up and I've got a packet this thick that this kid's uncle sent me, who happens to be an attorney. His uncle-in-law, I should say. And Representative Downey, do you, if you would answer this question, do you think it's right what happened to this young gentleman?
Representative Downey.
Well, Madam Chair and Representative Rukavina, I have no idea the circumstances of this. I mean, we all have dozens of people that walk into our offices asking us to somehow arbitrate some legal circumstance that they've gotten backed into, no fault of their own. Every single time I've said, I cannot get engaged in a legal matter here. The legal resources available to you at the state to help you with your problem. And if we start this precedent today, I mean, wow, we could have 100 amendments a day
Madam
to
Chair.
resolve some
Ma'am.
matter of
You know
unfairness.
what, members, let
Yeah.
Representative Downey, you missed the point of what I said. I was told by the Department of Human Services the only legal remedy this kid had was to pass a special law. And I've seen them done 100 times here in my 26 years. And maybe you're a different type of legislator than me, but when I see a bureaucratic injustice and see that there's no alternative but to pass a special law, I often do. And you know, sometimes I get raised, I end up looking like a buffoon that I am. But at least I tried for the kid. He did not, and none of this was his fault. Everybody agrees to that. Where's Mr. Lulich, Ms. Bonich? I want Lulich here. He's the one that drafted this for me, and he says it's specific enough that it won't cause any problems, and he's the gentleman that told me there was no other recourse, Representative Downey.
All right, if I might, Representative Biskins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification from the author of the bill, Representative Abeler. You encouraged this committee to put the amendment on so that you could continue then to work with Representative Rukavina. Is it your testimony that if we don't put it on in this committee, that you would then not work with Representative Rukavina? Because I agree with the chair that bills we pass out of here should balance. And if you can continue to work with Representative Rukavina and get to a solution on the House floor, I'm sure you'll find many empathetic ears there. But I'm not sure I got what you were saying when you said put it on so you can continue to work with him.
Madam Chair.
Representative Abeler.
Representative Biskins, actually, I was suggesting you put it on so the department will continue to work with him. I've been here for 14 years, same as you. And I can tell you, Representative Rukavina knows, the power of a moving amendment through a committee process inspires enthusiasm from departments. And the threat of a possible amendment does not incite such interest. If I were going to make an amendment to the bill to balance it, which I think it's my duty, I would suggest on page 127, we would amend section managing corporate foster care to increase that by $36,000. That number, just for everybody's information, is likely to come back from conference at under $2 million, which is my goal. And so, but that's the number that's going to be in flux in the bill anyway, and so it's a place just to park some money. So we do balance it. And so if Representative wants to amend his amendment to include that, that would be on lines 127.20 and lines 127.26 to increase both those numbers by $36,000 to $4,185,000 would solve the money. And I do think that there's a reason to keep departments eager and engaged, Representative Biskins, and you probably recognize that as well. So that's why I work with them anyway, and maybe the department would be just as eager to work on this from the floor, and it's the will of the committee. That's my suggestion.
Right, Representative Gottwald.
Madam Chair, I just I double checked with the Department of Human Services people who they can speak for themselves if they want to come up and answer this, but my understanding is that they gave Representative Rukavina direction about the nature of the amendment, not that his constituent had no other legal recourse. And again, the department can come up and confirm that, but I just spoke with them, and I just want to make sure that's clear for the record.
All right.
I want Mr.
Representative
Lulich.
Khan.
Well, we have now Representative Abeler, who knows the bill better than I did, has suggested a better way to balance it. I was just going to say I had balanced it, but let's take his amendment to balance it.
All right. Representative Greiling.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members and Representative Abeler. I wasn't going to speak on Representative Rukavina's issue. I was going to wait till the amendments were over and talk about the corporate foster care. But since now we're taking yet a third thing out of it, I really have to object. This is getting to be like in the general budget, we balance the budget because we borrow from the schools. In education this year, in education finance, we had a bill that someone wanted to fund another good cause, and so we took it out of early childhood, one early childhood program for another early childhood program. And now, within this budget, it appears that the corporate foster care is the slush fund for other things we want to fund. We've got, I think, Teen Challenge coming out of here, MAEPD for people over 65, which is like a huge cause for me. I would like that to be funded. But to be taking those things out of a program that's already been cut and underfunded for housing for people with disabilities, I was going to comment on that later, but I'll do it now because you're really making my fever pitch high to take yet a third thing out of a budget that's probably going to put people on the streets already.
Madam Chair.
Representative Abeler.
Representative Gradling, you know that I agree with you on the efforts here. This is the department acknowledges maybe a little aggressive a number. If you recall, a year ago, we were talking in terms of hundreds of millions of discussions about is that possible or not. I had $300 million from a waiver, which one waiver we got $156 million. So I have found out that that wasn't such an unrealistic number. The Senate was a little more aggressive, like $900 million in theirs. I thought that was a little high. If should the $4 million become law, which I do not expect it will be, I expect it to be $2 million or less at the end when all the dust settles with the department, and I'm working with them. That's 60 beds. There's some email going around about 400 beds, which is lunacy. If you take $180 a day times 365 days into $4 million, you get 60 beds. I don't want to close 60 beds in this way. And the challenge that the budget presented us from last time is they were immediate, and they were the one that closed, the one that vacated was closed. The proposal is to do a statewide evaluation of where the beds are necessary and downsize the 4-bed units. There's too many of them. They're too expensive. People are trapped in there. We've opened up the way to get people to move into more congregate living sites, up to 25% concentration, which means in a 50-unit place, there'd be 12 individuals living in apartments there with some supportive services at less than half the cost and a much better quality of life. That's what we're trying to push people towards. So there's no streets going on. And Representative Gradling, I understand. And so maybe Representative Rukavina will give you a different source for that. My personal pet project of $100,000 online on page 125, line 27. If you reduce the return on taxpayer investment MMB grant from $100,000 to $64,000, that would accomplish the same. And again, we can adjust this number, but at least this way it's not so sensitive. And maybe that'd be a better alternative. And I absolutely share your concern, Representative Gradling. I think about this at night. So, but if we don't find a way to manage the continuing care side, as we did with the health care side last time, people next year, as we face another budget crisis, are going to be faced with even more severe choices. So I'm trying to head that off with quality and positive changes. So I think I'll withdraw my suggestion about changing that. I don't want to change that number either. So, but it's just it's the number that's fluctuating. So, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Huntley.
Madam Chair and members, lawyer Westrom there suggested that he should sue people that sold him the house. Well, they're both in a nursing home. They've used money to spend down. My guess is they don't have any money left. How can you sue them?
Representative Sarah Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And not to belabor the point, but I do think that there's a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to this issue. This probably should have gone through the committee process, and though I appreciate Representative Rukavina's passion for his constituent, I do think that this needs a greater examination. I think that we should have not only the Department of Human Services to give us a little bit better idea of what kind of consultation that they gave to these individuals. Obviously, they're not supposed to give any legal advice to them, and I'm guessing that they didn't do that. But it would be helpful to hear from the Department of Commerce and what kind of recommendations and what actions they took against the title company. I'm not uncomfortable in moving ahead with this without having a lot of those answers, those questions answered, and I think that this should have traveled through the regular committee process as well.
Madam Chair.
All right. Representative Rukavina, do you want to amend your amendment, or do you want to let it ride as it is?
I'll take the amendment that Representative Abeler offered on whatever he offered it on, the $100,000. But I just do want to clarify something. Representative Anderson, I did request many times a hearing on this bill. Representative Gottwald knows that. He didn't have time for it. I actually even sent a nice letter after my hearing request to ask for a hearing on the house on the bill, and I didn't get it. So I've spoken to both Representative Gottwald and Representative Abeler about putting this on their bills, and they both implied to me that they were sympathetic and that I could try my hand, and I have. It's not my constituent. It's Representative Huntley's constituent, but I know this kid from when he was little, and I know his parents, and I know this is a pretty unique situation here. And I have all kinds of documentation upstairs to show you folks that everybody has tried. The problem, Representative Westrom, is every time somebody asks where the money went, the county says it's private information, and when they ask the Department of Human Services, they say it's private information. So there's nothing further to do, and here I have Mr. Lulich of DHS Special Recovery Unit, like Ms. Corporal at St. Louis County, is sympathetic to the situation, but feels he lacks the authority to do anything. He's the gentleman that told me that your only alternative is to do this. And so that's where we're at. On a huge bill, spending millions and millions of dollars, I'm trying to stop a kid from having a $72,000 lien against a house that he bought legitimately, paid for legitimately, did everything he was supposed to legitimately, and somehow everything slipped through the cracks, and now he doesn't own 80% of his house. So that's where it stands. Folks can vote how they want, but, you know, I got elected to do good things for people, and this is really doing something bad to a person that doesn't deserve it.
Representative Khan.
This is an observation I made in my first term in the legislature, which was a really long time ago. And this is a tremendous affirmation of it, which is the legislature is capable of passing a number in the millions without any question about it, because they can't get their hands around it. But as soon as you get to a number like 36,000, everybody understands exactly that's a number anyone can understand and know what they'll do it. So they can spend, quadruple the amount of time they would spend at just passing millions of dollars on. And it hasn't changed in all the time I've been here, no matter going back from the majority to the minority. So just a comment.
Representative Westrom, and we need to move on here pretty
Well,
soon.
Madam Chair, I just find it ironic that Representative Khan and Representative Huntley think that the third branch of government, our justice system, judicial system, is so off the wall. Representative Huntley, that's how we resolve disputes in a law-abiding, friendly, respecting personal rights democracy country that we live in. So I'm not suggesting that's a fun way to go, but it is a way we have set up in our country. So I don't think it's as off the wall as you and Representative Khan talk about. But Representative Huntley, Representative Rukavina has been talking about the daughter, not the wife, and so I don't know anything about him. To Representative Anderson's points, there are a lot of facts that none of us know. Maybe we should rather just get rid of the lien, the ability of departments to put lien on properties. I'd be more in favor of that. Why don't we just pass that as an amendment with this and stop this business of departments taking away somebody's house? I mean, that's the root cause of it, and the reason you put liens on is that there's a notice to the buyers and to the sellers and to the public that there's something going on here. Without looking at the facts, my guess is that's probably why they say there's no other option, because there's no money to go after, but that doesn't mean you can't file a lawsuit and somebody else would have to pay for it. But, I think Representative Abeler is saying he'd work on it. Passing it today doesn't mean it's going to be law, and Representative Rukavina can maybe find some other ways, but maybe we should rather stop having liens filed against private property, and that'd be another alternative.
Representative Biskins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to my more senior colleague, I do understand the numbers, and I do understand 36,000 here, 36,000 there, and then we're talking about real money once again. But, Representative, this has nothing to do with the money. All right, I think Representative Downey said it absolutely correctly. All right? Every single one of us can come in here with a dozen amendments written very tight for a dozen of our constituents to right a wrong. And is that what we should be doing as state policymakers? That's a decision for this committee and the body as a whole to make.
Representative Carlson.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I think the author of the bill and the chair of the relevant committee has offered a solution. He says put the language in. He will continue to work with Representative Rukavina and the department to see if there's a better solution than we have here today. But I would remind the committee that this isn't the first time that we've had situations where we've had to resolve them legislatively. Take a look at the pensions bill when that comes through, where there's been people that have been somehow wronged, and we attempt as a legislative body to correct those wrongs. Another example would be the claims bill when that comes through. So it's not unique that there's legislative intervention. I think the question probably is this drafted tightly enough so that it doesn't set a precedent? And Representative Rukavina has pointed out clearly that the attorney for the department drafted it tight enough so that it resolves this situation. And I would just suggest a yes vote and to go along with the author of the bill's suggestion.
Representative Rukavina, do you want to pay for your amendment, or you want to?
Well, Madam Chair, I took Representative Abeler's suggestion to lower that dollar amount on.
Representative Rukavina, all I've heard is suggestions. I
Madam
haven't
Chair,
heard an amendment to your
Can I
amendment.
offer an amendment to his amendment, just to make it balanced and people can vote? I would move on line 125.27 that we change the $100,000 to $64,000. That takes it out of my personal project, Return on Taxpayer Investment, which is a remarkable project. And that'll inspire me to find more ways to get my money back, too, so I can get the full funding for this project.
Representative Abeler, you have to amend the 857. Maybe Ms. Novak has a suggestion on how she would amend the amendment.
I'll defer to staff, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Oh, yeah.
on the 857 amendment after line 15, insert page 125, line 27, delete 100,000 and insert 64,000, and then correct the totals accordingly.
Madam Chair, that's the amendment that I meant all along.
Representative Rukavina, would you like to incorporate that
Yes,
into your
I
amendment?
would, Madam Chair.
All right, members, are there any further questions on the 812-0857 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
The amendment does not prevail.
Division, Madam Chair. Division.
Division being called. All those in favor raise their hand.
Oh.
I was wrong. The amendment does prevail. The amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And then the A105 amendment, is anybody going to claim that today?
Closing comments, Madam Chair, it's a good bill.
All right. Representative Abeler, are you familiar with the A105 amendment? Could it be a member that's attending another committee at this time? I'd hate to.
We'll do it on the floor if it. I'm not aware. I thought this bill is all done with this topic, and if it's not, I'll be informed.
All right. So I believe we have the bill in the shape that we need. No further amendments. Any additional questions? Representative Greiling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Back to the topic then that I was going to talk about. And Representative Abeler, I like that you're not sleeping at night thinking about it. I don't like that you're missing out on your sleep, but I know you do have a huge heart. And I'm not knowledgeable enough to argue that adult foster care isn't a very expensive model. I'm sure that it is. And so, if there's alternatives, you mentioned 12-bed sites and so forth. I would say that, with the knowledge I have, that could be a wash. But my concern is that we don't have the alternative places yet, and yet we're making quite ambitious goals for how many beds are going to be not here, and therefore how much money we're going to save. And I have also heard the number 400, and you're saying that's not true. It's more like 60, but I've heard it from some very credible groups, and so that's my fear. And I wonder what assurances you could give me that there are the alternative, cheaper sites, so that people aren't dumped off at Dorothy Day, which we know they are.
Well, Madam Chair.
Representative Abeler.
Representative Greiling, it's my intention to get a bill signed. There is, this is not a budget balancing year, thank goodness. Thank goodness we're flat, and who can argue about surpluses and all. But I'm so happy this committee is not asked to make further reductions, because that would be really hard to do. We're trying to continue our work in the continuing care side, where it's never been focused very much, trying to move people to more appropriate, more independent settings. Without a bit of a push, they don't move. And people get stuck in places where they're merely managed for 30 years, which has been the model. And the way I've survived in my work on this whole thing is to focus on the best of the client, not on the best of the vendor. The people who are objecting are vendors who are going to lose some business. And I don't want to put anybody out of business. But it's not our job at the state to keep vendors in business. It's our job to serve the clients. And the vending side, which I have a great deal of respect for, and I support a lot of their work. There's stuff in their bill here, in the bill that they've come up with to be more efficient and even to stay open in the face of declining budgets. But at the end of the day, our duty is to the clients. And so that's my philosophical view. At the end of the day also, the governor has to sign this thing. And if the department says you can get $1.2 million out of it, that's all I'm going to get out of it. And some of the projects I've tried to preserve, if you look at the spending in the bill, it's $1.7 million on projects that you would care about. Epilepsy services, disability, advocating change together, the support group for the people with high-functioning DD, and a bunch of other, the MAEPD for people that you've heard some just compelling testimony about that. And so without pushing the department, without pushing the providers, without pushing it all, I have no money to solve these really glaring problems. And the same way we're pushing the department with the amendment we put on to make them work, I have about a week left to do all the pushing, and then I'll see how far I got on the push. But I assure you, at the end, that when this comes out of conference, there'll be a number the governor and the department agree is tenable, that it will result in safety of the clients. And it'll probably be a lower number because there's some other money streams I'm trying to get, some other savings that they've not acknowledged yet. So that's the process, and it's a bit like sausage. But at the end, I think you'll like to enjoy the dinner with the little eggs and the sausage.
Representative Greiling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Abeler, I'm not going to belabor the point, but I would say it is a cut when you're taking other things out of this amount that we had last year, that there was a cut made. We knew how much we were expecting to cut, and then now other good programs are also being funded, and you even thought of suggesting a third program today from this fund. And so I think there is a danger, and we always try to save money by, having future projections on things with mental health that haven't always come to fruition.
Madam Chair.
Representative
Greiling, and I share your concerns. You know that. But let me tell you what a cut is and what a change in doing business is different. If I can move a person from $180 a day place to $100 to $80 a place day, I've cut $100 from my budget. But that client has experienced no change in probably better service if it's appropriate to their level of need and if they want to go. And so even though I save money, the only person who got cut was the provider that lost some business that they weren't entitled to get because they were hired to serve the client. The client didn't need so much anymore. And so it's only a cut if you do it badly and if someone gets hurt. This is a reform. This is a moving to a better way. This is moving to a new way to do business so we can fit within our budget. And so that's different. I'm trying to avoid a 1.67% rate cut. That is absolutely a cut. There's no change in function. There's no service improvement. It's just a reduction in money to people to do the same thing. That's a cut. If I can move people to a different level of service in a place that serves them just as well, that's actually an improvement. And so I'm not going to go back and forth. But just to help you understand the difference, and you can react to that again if you want. But you get the last word as far as I'm concerned.
Madam Chair. Okay. I would just like to say that I haven't heard from any providers. I'm being lobbied by people, lobbying for the people.
Okay.
Representative Huntley.
Well, my comment just relates to the section of the bill that increases the number of beds in a particular facility. And we heard the people that were supporting that were parents, mainly of kids that have severe disabilities. And they want to try some of these other facilities. The states around us have it, and they're very popular. Who's opposed to this is the people that run the 4-bed units, because that's what they're used to doing, and they don't want to change. And anytime you suggest that somebody change what they do, they're going to be opposed to it. And in this case, it's the parents of these kids that will decide whether they want a 4-bed unit, or a few of them will take these other things. And if it were me, I'd much prefer these other ones, I can tell you. Some of them are in farms. And I would much rather be living on a farm than basically locked into a house in the middle of the city in a 4-bed unit. So we're just creating options, and it's the parents of these kids that will decide.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Representative Abeler, like to renew your, I'm sorry, Representative Winchester.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Abeler, in the tax committee, I offered an amendment modeled on some legislation I read about that a number of our colleagues were pursuing as it relates to your bill. And I don't know, I don't serve on your committee. I don't know what you did with those. Pardon?
You're welcome every time.
I don't know what you did with those provisions, but I offered an amendment and I withdrew it to make a point about some items I had been reading about in some of the local coverage of what we do here. And there was a group of our colleagues who had a number of bills that they were attempting to really get at the assistance the poor receive through the Minnesota state budget and through the state legislature. And as you know, Representative Abeler, the assistance provided to the poor happens in your committee, and the assistance provided to the wealthy happens in the tax committee. And so I was trying to, people can laugh about it, but the facts are that the majority of carve-outs and tax credits and loopholes we provide go disproportionately to the wealthiest Minnesotans. And so in the tax committee, that's where we spend a lot of time figuring out how to get, people are very well off to either, however you want to phrase it, keep more of their own money or get a tax preferential treatment. And so I offered an amendment, and, I'm not going to do this now because it's, it's a tax amendment. But what I was trying to do is model what I read about, which is to do things like require that folks who receive our tax credits have to have drug testing. Folks who have drug offenses or other offenses would lose their tax preferences through the tax code for 10 years. That folks who are receiving all kinds of assistance through the tax committee, if they would reduce the amount of their lifetime. I don't want to use the word welfare because that's inflammatory to call it corporate welfare to some, but it's okay to call it for the poor welfare. So call them assistance, call them preferential treatment. The fact is that we all pay a little more in taxes when we help either group. If we help the poor, we pay a little higher taxes. That's what we're doing. That's how you pay for these bills. And if we help the rich, we all pay a little more in taxes because somebody else doesn't. So, I tried to lifetime the limits, and I even put the income limit at just over $1 million of income. So only millionaires were affected by my amendment. And, I could go on and on about all the provisions, and I actually just copied bills of our colleagues. And I won't tell folks here, which side of the aisle they sit on. I think people can just guess, but I took those bills and I just did it the same thing for the wealthy. And of course, I then withdrew the amendment, Madam Chair, because I think it's a destructive thing to do, and I think that the folks who are doing it to the poorest Minnesotans, I think it's destructive there as well. Can you tell me, Representative Abeler, what are you doing any of those ideas that were percolating around? I don't sit on your committee. I had heard that there was one that we were going to require that the courts alert the Commissioner of Health that anyone who's been convicted of a drug offense needs to get investigated. I wonder if you're interested if any person who receives a tax credit or a tax preferential treatment because they're, a wealthy job creator, if they should lose their tax credits that we all pay for. So if you can just let me know, did any of those ideas make it into this bill?
Representative Abler.
Thank you. The ones that are there are more of the centrist ones. So I'm not sure if any qualify for your list. I'll just try to remember off the top of my head. The EBT card concern, which has been a perennial thing. Last year we said you couldn't buy alcohol and tobacco with it. And now in this bill, which seems to be supported by even the department, is that eliminate the cash portion to the 5-state area. And so maybe there's something to work on there for future work for you. Could limit the tax spending to only whatever. But so that's in the bill, which is much different than what it was originally. Currently, a person is supposed to self-report their drug offenses. And so Representative Driscowski did some work with the Department of Public Safety and Corrections to have those be reported into the system more automatically. No new things happen. And if I believe it's vendor paid to the family. If the family doesn't lose the money, just that individual doesn't get the chance to spend the money. It goes to vendor pay to make sure their family gets basic needs. And then if you, it's vendor paid. So it's the person gets it, but it's vendor paid for their rent, utilities, et cetera. So yeah, I guess I said that wrong. But so they still get the money, but they don't get cash. And the other part is if you misuse an EBT card by buying alcohol and tobacco, then you'll be eventually barred from an EBT card for the cash portion. I think that's the bulk of what's in the bill.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your answer, Representative Abler. My sense was that you would not go down that road. I appreciate that. And I will say that I'm actually pretty moderate on this. I think it's okay when people are receiving cash assistance for us to know that they're not spending on things that are not things we'd want them to, and that if there's drug problems, we need to know about that. But, I just want to make the point that we don't do that for all the other handouts in Minnesota and for folks at the top end of the income spectrum. We don't give people their cash for the tax code and say, but it's in a check to your mortgage. It's just cash. That's all it is. We used to have straight up credits that we just give people the check. And I do want just people to be aware of, you mentioned residency. We in most of our tax credits and tax assistance in the tax code, we don't require you even be a Minnesotan, ever. So, and then we don't have any accountability that, the idea here is you're going to create a job, but we don't say you have to do that either. You don't have to report that in to anybody either. We just, on a hope and a prayer, we just give you money and hope you'll someday maybe create a job and you don't even have to live here. So, Madam Chair, I appreciate a couple minutes for folks to think about this. I want to thank Representative Abler for not putting those provisions into his bill that I had read about this year and was concerned about. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Hundley?
Briefly. Madam Chair and members, there are a lot of good things in this bill, and there's some things that I really don't like transferring HMO regulation from the Department of Health to the Department of Commerce. And the Department of Commerce knows a lot about financial regulation of insurance companies, but they know practically nothing about health. It's not their business. Currently, HMOs are regulated by the Department of Health, and other health insurance is regulated by the Department of Commerce if it's not an HMO. My personal view is that you ought to take that other health insurance and move it to a health department that knows something about health. The health insurance is a lot different than automobile insurance. Commerce Department does a great job of regulating automobile insurance because it's all financial. Health is completely different. And how do we get the kind of health care we want to people? And I don't think Commerce is the place to regulate health insurance of any kind. It should be done by the Department of Health. So that's one thing I don't like about the current bill. I certainly don't like some of the EBT card restrictions. I think they're undue punishment of people. And, people make mistakes. in life, and we all have, and life goes on, and we try to overcome them. I don't think people need to look at the EBT card as a way to punish people, which is what this bill is doing. So, again, however, there are lots of good things in here as well, Jim. But there are some that I don't like, and I would also say that there's a bunch of things in here that I don't think the Department of Human Services will support. I don't think the Department of Health will support, and that makes me suspect that the governor will not support them either.
Thank you. Representative Westrom, very briefly.
Madam Chair, briefly, but Representative Lincheski needs a little rounding to her description. Madam Chair, Representative Lincheski, there is a huge difference in lower tax rates. You operate from the paradigm that all money is government's, and what we don't collect in taxes, we're gracious enough to leave in your hands. The difference is when people earn money, the government is the one taking it. And so lower tax rates, tax credits, means we leave their money in their hands. That is the difference between what you're talking about. Drug testing for people that need welfare benefits to get through a crisis in their life, I think, is very reasonable, as we all have supported helping people out when they're in a needy situation. But there should be no reason we shouldn't do drug testing for those that are have been convicted of that type of a crime. If we're going to be helping them out, I think the taxpayers owe that kind of payback. But there's a huge difference between lower tax rates and tax credits and how you view the money that people make themselves. I think most people view it should be theirs to begin with, not government's.
Representative Lincheski.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate, and I think the old trick when someone says your name, usually folks get to respond. And Representative Westrom, I find it insulting that you would attempt to describe my paradigm.
Yeah.
You just said what my paradigm is in the view of the world as it relates to taxes, and what you said was not accurate. And you also, I don't think we're listening. I am fine with drug testing. I said that. And I think when people are receiving benefits, we should look at that. My concern is we don't make the CEOs who are receiving tens of millions of dollars have drug testing. Let's have the same strategy here for the folks who receive assistance because they're poor, and for the folks who receive preferential treatment in the tax code who are wealthy. And I didn't mention tax rates. I'm talking about the carve-outs and the tax expenditures that people can talk about them as if this is just folks keeping their own money or, whatever they want to call them. Use the conservative, speak on that. The fact remains that because of those tax carve-outs, loopholes, and benefits, we all pay a little more in taxes. Or we cut something. So for the same amount of money we're paying today, we all get a little less government. It's raised the price to the rest of us when some folks get carve-outs. It's also true about the poor receiving assistance. We all pay a little more. All I'm asking for is to consider equal treatment. We don't say if the CEO of a company in Minnesota who's receiving an angel investment tax credit or a Job Z zone or the transit passes our big employers get that they give to their employees to ride the transit for free, we don't ask them to do drug testing to keep getting these benefits that we're all paying for. And I think the better way is to do less of this intrusive looking at both. But I just want to highlight that it is the Omnibus Health Bill that thinks through who should we help, at what income levels, for how long, what should we require of them, and when should we investigate them. And we do almost zero of that in the tax code. Yet on the price tag is significantly higher for what we're giving out in tax preferences. So, Representative Westrom probably wants to respond now, but I'm insulted that someone would characterize my paradigm that government should just get everybody's money all the time. And, I'm insulted by that. I don't think that. I'm sure there's a couple really liberal people here who do, but I'm not one of them. And I think we all do better when we cut taxes and broaden the base and not have these carve-outs. We could lower the income tax, the sales tax, and every other tax in the state if we stopped carving out handouts to a select few. And that's what we spend time on in the tax committee. And so, Madam Chair, I appreciate you allowing me to respond to Representative Westrom.
Representative Khan.
Well, I just wanted to point out there's a nice letter in the paper today that reports that Vice President Cheney's heart transplant and other treatments totally at public expense have totaled nearly $1 million, and maybe it might have been better for all of us if he'd had that heart transplant a little earlier. But I think we have to look at, when we're looking at the kinds of benefits that people get, the kind of extraordinary expenses that we're having in our healthcare system, which I defy anyone around this table to justify.
All right, members, we're far afield of Representative Abeler's bill. I think we've probably discussed it enough. Representative Abeler, would you like to renew your motion?
I would, Madam Chair. Thank you for everybody's attention. The bill will handle all the concerns people have, I think, as when this gets done.
Representative Abeler renews his motion that House File 2294, as amended, be recommended pass and refer to the General Register. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. No. Motion prevails. Thank you, Representative Abeler. Representative Urdahl,
Thank you,
my
Madam Chair.
apologies that we weren't able to get you done before. When you came, for many members, we've already discussed this bill earlier. Representative Rukavina, I see you have another amendment.
Madam Chair, was that the only amendment?
To my knowledge.
I am looking for the Urdahl bill, and I finally found it here, Madam Chair. Thank you. Madam Chair, do you know whose heart that Dick Cheney got by any chance? Should have had mine, I think.
I don't know that I'd bring that up if I were you.
Madam Chair, this is a bill that was heard in Representative Urdahl's committee, and I think he just, inexplicably left it out. And so I'm offering it as an amendment. I've talked about this issue before, and the fact that the Department of Natural Resources has bought, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars worth of land through the Legacy Fund and the LCCMR, and yet land that is not generating any revenue for the school trust. Land, I might add, that was placed on Lakeshore by the Department of Natural Resources' insistence. It still languishes there, and I showed you this map for those of you on the Legacy Committee. But this is all these different colors here, except for the dark green, are school trust lands on Lake Vermilion. And here's the park that the DNR traded and gave U.S. Steel $18 million for, instead of just trading with U.S. Steel on a bunch of the school trust land, Lakeshore land, that the DNR insisted on getting back in 1998. So the bill and now the amendment just says that, they'll start to make the school kids whole and the trust whole by paying the same amount, one buildable lot back from the lake that we'll buy through the Legacy Fund for the people of the state instead of auctioning it off, which is the other alternative. And we should put some money in the trust and pay the same price that they paid U.S. Steel. Again, my argument being, members, that what kind of a trustee would give a mining company $18 million instead of the school trust? And so that's the amendment, and I appreciate your support. And I know in his heart that Representative Urdahl supports me.
Representative Urdahl, I don't think I officially moved Senate File 2493, the first unofficial engrossment, to be recommended to pass. And then we will, Representative Rukavina moves the A120860 amendment. Your thoughts on the Rukavina amendment, Representative Urdahl?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the discussion that Representative Rukavina brought to the Legacy Committee on this issue. We have had quite a bit of discussion on school trust land, and not just in my committee, but in the legislature with Representative O'Driscoll, Representative Dietrich's bill. And while I do appreciate some of the comments that have been made by Representative Rukavina on this issue, I don't think that I'd like to put it into this bill. Perhaps Representative McNamara has some comments as well.
Representative McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would recommend members vote no. This isn't ready for us to do yet, but as Chairman Urdahl has said, Representative O'Driscoll and Representative Dietrich are working hard on this issue, and we should not do this at this time. Thank you.
Any questions, comments? All right, Representative Rukavina renews his motion that the A12-0860 amendment be adopted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? No. Amendment's not adopted. All right, I think that's it for amendments. Are there any questions on the bill? Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Urdahl, I'm just looking at the back of the spreadsheet, and you've got an item in here for Let's Go Fishing in Minnesota. I know in the past the Department of Natural Resources has provided funding for this. Can you tell me if they still provide funding for Let's Go Fishing?
Representative Urdahl.
Madam Chair, Representative Anderson, you're asking, does the DNR provide funding? Representative Anderson, I do not believe that that is their intent.
Okay.
All right.
Representative
Anderson.
Madam Chair, Representative Urdahl, so they've stopped providing funding to the Let's Go Fishing program.
Madam Chair, Representative Anderson, yes.
Okay. And Madam Chair,
Representative Anderson.
the other question that I had was on line 135, the Film Production Incentive Program, Independent Feature Project, Minnesota. Can you just tell me a little bit more of what that is?
Representative Urdahl.
Madam Chair, Representative Anderson, what we're trying to do is to stimulate the film industry to make more motion pictures in Minnesota on the production end and not on the snowbait end, and trying to widen the networking of groups that are involved in this. We have a lot of motion pictures that possibly should have been made in Minnesota but are not because of the incentives offered by other states that we don't. For example, Gran Torino should have been made here in Minnesota but was made in Detroit.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Urdahl. So that money isn't earmarked for a specific project at all?
Madam Chair, Representative Anderson, no, it is not.
Any questions? Representative Rukavina.
Madam Chair, thank you. Representative Urdahl, can you tell me the total amount of new land purchases in this bill?
Representative Urdahl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Rukavina, 11,744 acres in easement, 7,391 acres acquired.
And what would that total dollar amount be?
Representative Urdahl.
Where is my money? Mr. Becker can give me the answer to that.
Madam Chair, it's 30 million.
McNamara.
It's 30 million.
Right.
So, Madam Chair and members,
Representative Rukavina.
it's $30 million of new purchases for land in here, and we couldn't purchase the land after everybody, many people on this committee 3 years ago fell all over themselves to buy this little bit of lakeshore on Lake Vermilion. And I really think it's shameful that the DNR did what they did, but even more so that the members don't have the intestinal fortitude to take on whoever it is, Lessard Sams or the DNR or whoever it is that's buying all this property when we're, I believe, the third largest state or second in the nation behind the feds in Alaska in public land. But one last question, if I could, Madam Chair.
Representative Rukavina.
Representative Urdahl, did you change any of the requests by, like, the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund or the Clean Water Fund or I don't know what it's called, Lessard Sams, I guess, for lack of a better word?
Madam Chair?
Representative Urdahl.
Representative Rukavina, I think The only change that wouldn't be categorized as a minor change would be in the outdoor heritage portion, the Lessard Sam's recommendation in the Northwoods project. We reduced the funding there from $14 million to roughly $7 million, basically because we felt that another appraisal was needed. And also another change, we have put more money into the aquatic invasive species work in the clean water and also some out of the habitat.
Representative Rukavina.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Urdahl, for at least changing the recommendations a little bit of the citizens, because it is the, charge of the legislature to raise and spend money. And I've always tried to, when I was on the LCCMR and still am, to change the recommendations to prove that we can and should. And I'm glad that you made a change finally, because I think this might be the first one. But you would have done a heck of a lot better job if you made this change too. So that's all I'm going to say.
Representative Rukavina, you did win one today.
I know, Madam Chair. I'm batting 500. I'd be a billionaire if I was playing Major League Baseball.
All right. Any additional questions for the bill author? Seeing none, I'll renew my motion that Senate File 2493, as presented, be recommended pass and referred to the General Register. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
No.
Motion prevails. Thank you, Representative Urdahl, and again, my apologies
Thank you.
For the delay. All right, Representative House. Okay, Representative House, we want to start with House File 2754.
Madam Chair, I would move House File 2754, recommended to pass and send it to the General Register.
All right, members, Representative House, if you'd like to explain your bill.
Okay, Madam Chair, I would like to move the A4 amendment first to put the bill in the proper shape.
And your A4 amendment does what?
Pardon?
And what does your A?
Oh, it takes care of the bond expenses.
All right. Members, Representative Howes moves the A4 amendment to get the bill in the shape you'd like to discuss. Any questions on the A4 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Amendment's adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill will restore our capital. Total is $221 million. It would be $60 million in each fiscal year starting July 1st in 13, 15, and I'm sorry, 12, 13, should be 15.
13, 14, 15, I
Yes,
believe.
and 41 in the final year. And the work is limited to the necessary things with restoring the capital, the structure, the heat, plumbing, electrical, and it's silent on the artistic paintings on the ceiling or the gold leaf at this time.
All right, members, are there any questions on House File 2754? Representative Carlson.
Madam Chair, I happen to serve with Chair House on the Capital Investment Committee, and several of us expressed a concern because the project is run over 6 years, that we're tying up $221 million in bonding authority when we could stage the project. And the example I used when we've had big projects in the past, and there are probably several that members around the table could think of, but for example, the Mayo Tower at the University of Minnesota on the health science campus. We did, I think it was 2 stories at a time, and that way we didn't tie up a lot of the bonding over a long period of time. We would continue with that project, and everybody made a commitment that we would complete it. I don't think anybody that I know of, at least, is going to argue against redoing the Capitol. It's in need of work. But when you provide the entire $221 million, at this point in time, it crowds out other needed projects. Projects across the state of Minnesota that support our infrastructure that are currently before us. And when we look at the other bonding bill that will be before us this morning, at the 280 number, it's grossly inadequate in terms of what the rest of the state's needs are. So I would advocate, in the case of the capital, that we stage it and deal with it over a period of 6 years, but provide the bonding authority each biennium.
Madam Chair, Representative Carlson, first of all, it's over 4 years, and I will answer it briefly, and then I would like admin to explain in detail why we should do it this way. But my feeling is when you do a job of this size, to have a CM come in and bid a total of $241 million estimated project, knowing they're only going to have $60 million, knowing that they're going to have to add in a mobility clause or price, that means after the $60 million's gone, the legislature has not yet approved anymore, they will have to dismantle and move away from the project and tighten up everything that hasn't been finished. That will escalate at 10 to 15%, and then I would like Mr. Waslowski with admin to touch on that.
Welcome to the committee. If you'll state your name for the record, please.
Madam Chair, members, my name is Wayne Waslowski. I'm the Director for Real Estate and Construction Services for the County Administration. Representative Hall's really hit on the key points. If we had all the money up front, what we would be asking the construction management firm to do is give us, as once we get to the design work to about 90% complete, we'd ask them to give us a guaranteed maximum price for the entire project over that 4-year period. If we don't have the money, I think there's going to be great reluctance for them to give us a guaranteed maximum price for the entire project. The other thing, and members are fully aware of this, is that the issue, there would be risk that future legislatures would not appropriate funding on the schedule that you have laid out for the project, or it would be in different dollar amounts. And as soon as we complete a design and then we change either the schedule or the scope of the project, that's going to increase the cost to the state. So those would be, I think, the disadvantages of a phased approach in the appropriations.
All right, thank you. Representative Carlson.
Yeah, Madam Chair, to the witness, I said 6 years. That was my recollection, that it would be 6 years before the project is completed. The chair just said 4 years. Could you explain which number is correct? I may be wrong, but my recollection from capital investment was that it was a 6-year timeline before the capital project would be completed.
Representative Carlson, I think the money appropriation is over 4 years on lines 16 and 17 of the bill.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I understand that.
Okay.
But the project, what I was saying, wouldn't be completed for 6 years.
Mr. Waslowski.
Madam Chair, Representative Carlson, the schedule has the design starting in this year, and then the major construction work would be completed by December 31st of 2016. So the construction period is 4 years. If you add in the design work, then you're into a 5th year. The issue on some of the decorative finishes, as well as some of the other historic elements, those are things that could go out into the year 2017.
Okay. Madam Chair, then 5 years.
Representative Carlson.
6. But the point I was trying to make, Madam Chair, with my comments was that you're going to have that authorization sitting idle for a period of time. And when you look at the capital at the 221 and the bill that will be before us a little later at 280, it's crowding out by giving full authorization at this point other needed projects, whether they be MNSCU, the University of Minnesota, some of the projects for other state agencies. Our infrastructure overall is in greater need than what that $280 million will provide. And when you look at the requests of the agencies in the higher ed systems, when you look at the governor's recommendations, my concern is that we could stage this and provide for more projects in a second bill that'll be before us this morning. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just to follow up on that, I strongly believe that we need to commit and commit fully, and I did speak with the governor last night at 7:15, discussed it with him. He said he is fully on board with committing the state of Minnesota to restoring the capital. I handed the phone to Representative Anzelk, and he said the same to Representative Anzelk. The governor is on record of fully supporting this plan.
All right. Representative Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the testifier, Mr. Waslowski. Oh, good. The interest rates right now are exceptionally low, probably a very unique time right now. And I would suspect you might think that interest rates would possibly or probably be going up over the next 4 years. Might that factor into the decision to commit these funds at this time?
Mr. Waslowski.
Madam Chair, Representative Kiffmeyer, how Minnesota management budget, when they actually go out into the market, they don't do it by project. They do it based on the overall cash flow requirements for all the appropriations, GEO-bond appropriations that are out there. So they will phase the bond sales over the life of the project. So it really it's not like we're locking into an interest rate up front on the project.
Representative Sarah Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Waslowski. I'm just wondering if having this full amount right up front, does this prevent having to make, I know we've done a lot of temporary fixes to kind of get us through. Does that stop that kind of issue and having money kind of just blow out the door that way?
Mr. Waslowski.
Madam Chair, members, that's really at the heart of the issue here is you've probably read in the papers this discussion of a tipping point, and really what that's describing is either we're going to be in a perpetual repair project that you'll always see scaffolding somewhere either on the exterior of the building or in the interior of the building, or we do a comprehensive restoration. And really to do a comprehensive approach, I think everybody knows the history here. We've been working on a restoration plan for the Capitol for about 28 years in one form or another, including pre-design effort in 2001. Pre-design was completed. That went on the shelf. Pre-design update in 2005. That plan went on the shelf. Working group, they didn't reach an agreement. So it really gets back to what Representative Howes and the governor are saying is we need to fully commit to the project to make sure it gets done. Because in between what's happened is the buildings continue to deteriorate.
Representative Carlson.
Yeah, Madam Chair, as I pointed out, I'm not arguing against the restoration of the Capitol. I'm arguing that we're going to have bonding authority sitting idle. And there was a report that was presented in committee members that, if I recall correctly, the report said it could be staged. And the first stage, I would ask then if the Department of Administration could reference that report and what the first stage would consist of, because it goes kind of back to the question of piecemeal, because that report indicated that you could do a major part of the capital restoration at about 72 million or something like that. And members, the other thing before he answers is that it's my understanding that the Senate has been talking about, is looking very seriously at staging the project. So it's not just some of us sitting here today that are arguing that point. The other body is looking at that as an approach as well. So if you could comment about the report and what stage one would be.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Waslowski.
Representative Carlson, the Capital Preservation Commission, through their work over the last several months, that was one of the key issues that they wanted us to address is could we keep the building occupied to some level throughout the restoration project. And so we spent a lot of time looking at the sequencing of the work, particularly around the chambers. And really until we get a construction management firm on board with the right expertise for them to lay out the scope of the project and the schedule, you won't know for sure that the chambers can be kept open. But I think that's everybody's goal, is to minimize the amount of time that the existing tenants are out of the building, including hopefully being able to keep the chambers open throughout the project. And so that sequencing is that we've been looking at is, to a large degree, has been driven by how do we minimize that amount of time that the occupants could be out of the building. So this first phase of work, first you'd be doing the design work on the overall design of the restoration. So that'd be on the entire building. We're currently in design on the repairs to the exterior stone. There's funding in that first phase to actually fund the repair work to the exterior stone, as well as the replacement of the exterior windows. And those are really the key activities that are in that first phase sequence of work. And it's as well as doing some of the preparation work up in the attic for placement of the air handling units, as well as in the basement. So that was really the initial work that you would see happening over the next year and a half.
I'll just make a final comment. As we're making this decision, it's a worthy project overall. It's how you choose to fund it, but I would encourage members to give some thought to, as this bill moves forward, what the needs are on your college campuses at the University of Minnesota and other state agencies over that period, and then apparently with the design and so on, 5 years. That's the middle number between the chair and I guess between the 4 and the 6. But at any rate, it's how much we want to do for the rest of state government at this point in time with the numbers that are before us. Thank you.
And Representative Carlson, we can't lose track of the fact that we did $498 million in bonding last year as well. So last year we had a particularly large bonding bill for a first year of a biennium.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm not arguing that point one way or the other. I was here and supported that bill.
All righty. Are there any additional questions on House File 2754 as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The bill is on its way to the General Register. All right, Representative Howes, your next bill on the agenda is House File 2622. Would like to move that bill for consideration?
Madam Chair, I would move House File 2622 be recommended passage sent to the General Register.
All right, and you have an A15 amendment?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair, and I'm going to ask Ms. Dyson, well, first I'm going to, if you take the A15 amendment, I'm going to delete from line 1.9 through 1.17. I'll briefly explain that. Yes, federal government has passed the money to do the St. Croix Bridge. Oak Park Heights believes they need $1 million to do some of the work in the city. I'm getting a little bit of pushback from the mayor, and I would like to talk to some more people before I do this.
So Representative Howes would like to amend the A15 amendment and delete lines 1.9 through 1.7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
1.17, my apologies. All those in favor of that amendment to the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The amendment is amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask Ms. Dyson to just go through the summary of the bill, and then we'll stand for questions.
Wait a second. We haven't adopted the A15 amendment as
right.
amended. Would you like to explain that first?
Ms. Dyson will explain.
Welcome to the committee, Ms. Dyson. If you'll state your name for the record, please.
Madam Chair, Deborah Dyson from House Research. The A15 amendment as just modified, lines 1.2 to 1.5 are correcting numbers that are in Section 1 of the bill, the summary, all of the funds. In particular, it corrects the bond sale expenses number, the total in the bill, the general fund debt service, bond proceeds fund, and the state transportation fund. Then on line 1.6 to 1.8 of the amendment, it's amending the DNR appropriation for dam renovation, removal, and restoration to provide a set-aside of $25,000 for the City of Anoka's pre-design of renovation of the Rum River Dam. The amendment, the A15 amendment, starting on 1.18, this is the bond sale authorization number. Again, it's correcting the number that's in the bill. And the same thing for the line 1.19, it's correcting the state transportation fund bond sale authorization. 1.120 or 1.20 on the amendment, it's correcting the annual general fund debt service appropriation to the MHFA for the infrastructure housing bonds. In the bill, there's $10 million authorized for the MHFA to issue, and the annual debt service appropriation should be $740,000, not $1.85 million. And then lastly, the rest of the amendment is in the back of the bill related to the Lake Superior Poplar River Water District, and it adds a subdivision that terminates the appropriation of water from the Poplar River, which was authorized in the last session. Once the permits for this new district are issued and water is being pulled from Lake Superior, and then the repealer, it conforms with that addition to the language for the Lake Superior Poplar River District, and that's the amendment.
All right, any questions on the A15 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the A15 amendment as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The A15 amendment is adopted. Representative Howes, if you would like to present your bill to the committee.
Madam Chair, I'll stand for questions. I believe we went through, no, we did not go through the, I'm going to have Ms. Dyson go through the summary, and then we will stand for questions.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair and members, the summary of totals for each of the agencies is on page 2 of the bill, and that's where you'll see that there is money for the University of Minnesota at $39,060,000 and the MnSCU system at $56,455,000. Minnesota State Academies $1 million. I'm sorry. The Perpich Center for Arts Education at $263,000. Natural Resources at $21,409,000. The Pollution Control Agency is at $1,956,000. Board of Water and Soil Resources at $10 million. The Rural Finance Authority, $33 million. That's all user financing. The Zoological Garden is $5 million. Department of Administration is $8 million. The Amateur Sports Commission has $375,000. Military Affairs has $2 Public Safety has $2 million. Department of Transportation, $38,500,000. And as you'll see in the summaries, that's all general fund. I'm sorry. Met Council has $8,100,000. Human Services is $2.5 million. Veterans Affairs is at $3.25 million. Corrections has $14,128,000. Deed has $46,285,000, and Public Facilities Authority at $23,600,000. Housing Finance Agency is $5 million, and Historical Society has $3,250,000. I don't know how much detail you would like.
Let's see what questions there are, Ms. Dyson. Are there any questions? Representative Greiling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Howes, this is for a question for you, and I know there's hard choices when you do a bonding bill this small, and I'm very grateful that there is the $10 million in here for supportive housing. I don't know if you were here for my comments with Representative Abeler's last bill, but when we're closing some parts of places for people with mental illness to go, it's good to know there's at least the beginnings of other places for them to go. But my question, though, is why there's not a penny in here for the Minnesota Security Hospital at St. Peter. That one has been in the news quite a bit with all the problems with seclusion and restraints, and I think it's been documented that part of the reason for doing all of that is the building is so archaic, you know, with the sight lines and the split levels. And I'm wondering if you visited there and why. I talked with the director of that hospital, and he said it's not a therapeutic building in any way, shape, or form. And it seems to me it's high time to get busy and start addressing that. We do a lot for sex offenders because they're civilly committed. The people at St. Peter are also civilly committed. They're not in prison. And we upgrade our prisons. We're systematically working on the sex offenders. But here we have a large building with a lot of people who are there for years, and there's nothing in there. And I know $40 million is a large number for this bill, but even some pre-design money or something to show that, as a nod, that this is a huge problem and to start addressing it.
Representative House.
Madam Chair, Representative Greiling, as you said in your opening statement, sometimes when a bill is a certain price, you need to make hard decisions, and that's what we did.
Representative Greiling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative House, did the committee go there, or did you go there and actually see it? Because I think that would have possibly gotten it in the bill if people had a chance to look at that building.
Representative House.
Representative Greiling, I visited St. Cloud Prison, the intake. I felt that actually rose to a higher level, but there wasn't the money to do that either. I did not visit St. Peter this year. I have in the past. And again, hard decisions had to be made, and we made them.
Okay. Representative Greiling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My last comment. Well, Representative House, I had the same discussion with the Democrats yesterday because we have a proposal, an alternative larger bill proposal that also did not include this project, but now it does. And so I would urge you, as the time goes forward, that you would keep an open mind.
I will keep it.
Representative House.
I will keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Representative McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative House, Section 39 on page 42 is a substantial change to the shade tree program that was funded for $3 million in 2010. That there's not peace in the valley on this issue at all, and I would hope that as this bill moves forward, you will reconsider that this should not be part of the bill. I'm not ready. Representative Wagenius is not here, but at some point, I want Representative Wagenius and I to be able to weigh in. And Madam Chair, we're willing to not do that yet today, but this cannot stay in the way it is. Thank you.
Well, and members, this bill will be laid over, so there'll be time to discuss that before the bill leaves the committee. Any other questions on House File 2622? Representative Carlson.
Madam Chair, your last comment, we're not voting on this bill
No,
today?
you will not be voting on this one today. At least this morning.
At least this morning. Well, Madam Chair, wanted to make a few comments, but now I'm not sure if I should make them now or later. Maybe I'll make a couple of comments. It was alluded to earlier when I was commenting about the Capitol. The dilemma that we're facing is that a lot of needed projects, at least in my mind, are being crowded out. So if there's going to be work on an amendment or something later today, just to remind the committee that the budget that was passed, and you used, Madam Chair, the number the other day that there was about $5 million provided for debt service. Actually, I think it's a little bit below that, 4.7 or 4.8 or something like that. But it does support a $775 million bonding bill with our action that we've already taken. And what's before us now, if you take the capital plus this bill, is about $500 million. And as this bill moves forward, what is happening when the House has a small bonding bill, and so I would hope that maybe as whatever these discussions are today take place, you keep in mind when you head into conference committee, the rule is that you can't come back with a project that's not in one bill or another. And when you come in with one side with a very small bonding bill, then that means that if the Senate does in fact do what I think they probably are going to do with the Capitol and stage it, and they're also at $500 million, you'll be working from the Senate's list. That's the disadvantage you face. And I've been a conferee on capital investment bills going back fairly consistently for about 20 years, going back to about 1980. And then in more recent years, when we've been in the minority, that's not been the case. But the point is that you do want to develop a bill that positions this body in a good bargaining position with the Senate. And this is the kind of bill that requires cooperation between the two caucuses. I mean, it takes 81 votes to pass. And my concern as a member of the minority, the way I'm seeing this unfolding here, is that we're not being given an opportunity then to really develop a bill that helps create a level playing field between the House and the Senate, and yes, would have some projects that I think some of the members of my caucus would be interested in. So I would hope those are some of the things that you would think about as things move through the day, and you lay the bill over and continue to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Carlson. Any additional comments before? I'm sorry, Representative Breinhardt, you were on the list. I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative House, I have a question for you about how the Minsky list of priorities functioned in your decision-making process with the colleges and university projects.
Representative House.
Madam Chair, Representative Breinhardt, I looked at projects that were moderately priced so I could get as many in as I could and help as many colleges as I could, and that was what defined what I put in the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay. My second is a comment and somewhat independent from that. I just wanted clarification on that, and I do understand, given your decision on the size of the project, why you went that route. But I'm obligated to comment for not only my district but the whole region of South Central Minnesota on this bill, because it's not a good bill for South Central Minnesota. The HEPR funding is very low. I come from a university community. We not only have we have two Minsky institutions in our area. The lack of the South Central College Faribault Classroom project in the bill, while it's not directly in my region, has a direct impact because South Central College Mankato or North Mankato can't move forward with any of their projects on the Minsky list until this Faribault campus, which has been a long time on the list, is addressed. The St. Peter Regional Treatment Center is a significant interest for a wide range of reasons, some of which Representative Greiling mentioned. Others are obviously economic development and security interests in the region. The Minnesota State Mankato Hockey Arena, which is being developed at the Civic Center, and the Civic Center Auditorium expansion has been an economic development project that's been 6 years in the making. It's never received state bonding funds and is having a great impact on our region from an economic development standpoint. So all of those are issues that make it very difficult for me to support this bill.
Thank you, Representative Breinhardt. And for members, I know there's 3 finance committees that are starting at 10:15. The bonding bill that we're working on now will be laid on the table, and the last bill on the agenda will also not be voted on, but laid on the table for those members that have to attend other meetings. We won't be taking any more votes today. So any additional questions on Representative Howe's bill? I'm sorry, Representative Biskins. Okay. With that, we will lay House File 2622 as amended on the table. Then we just have one bill left.
You have your marriage license?
What is that adult or that foster care program? Oh, 29. This is ridiculous.
I don't have mine. Where do you get it? Go get it.
MI or fund? Are they all MI people?
Representative Holberg, would you like to move your, or I guess I can move your bill 2958 to be laid over on the table. To your bill, Representative Holberg.
Thank you, members. And House File 2958 tries to get at an issue that we continue to struggle with, and that being federal funds, how they are taken in by the state, what type of legislative approval or not we're able to have relative to that. And probably the easiest way to explain this is you have a two-sided handout that shows the current process for federal funds, and then on the back side the changes for Senate File 24 or House File 2958 in an attempt to try and get around the issue. And I know both sides of the aisle have struggled with this, and as we flip back and forth between which party's in control of the governor's office and which party's in control of the legislature, people have different feelings on whether or not the legislature should have more or less control in this process. But for discussion purposes, I'm putting forth this. I know that the department wants to testify on this as well. Maybe we can start with that, and then as I've said, this is going to get laid over so people can kind of chew on it a little bit and see what changes or amendments they'd like to make to it as well. So,
Thank you, Representative Holberg. Let's go to the testifier, and then we can entertain questions from the committee. Could you state your name for the record and proceed?
Certainly. My name is Britta Rayton, and I'm an Executive Budget Coordinator at MMB. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. There are many components of the bill that MMB does not object to. So revising the timeline for review from 20 days to 30 days for the non-urgent reviews, we do not object to. And adding an additional review time frame in August is also something that we would not object to. And requiring the LAC to act as a body instead of as individual members of the LAC for the purposes of recommendations is also something that we wouldn't object to and actually think would add some clarity to how the process is supposed to run. The piece that we are most concerned about is the elimination of the urgent request. That's repealed within this bill, and we do think there are times when an urgent request is needed when a grant has a critical time frame where it needs to advance. I pulled a couple examples just to illustrate this. Back in 2009, the Department of Health received funding for H1N1 preparedness, and the federal government announced the funding in July, with the Department of Health requesting approval of the grant less than a month later. So they turned around and deployed that funding to local units of government for preparedness for H1N1 in a time frame that was just a matter of weeks. And this bill would not accommodate that time frame. Another example is just from this past summer, where there was an emergency homeowners loan program made available by the federal government. It was announced in late May, awarded in June, and the feds required that the funding be deployed in July. And this was for mortgage payment relief for homeowners in crisis. Again, this bill would not accommodate that time frame. So we do think that there is a need for state agencies to be able to respond quickly to available federal funds that they did not foresee coming from the federal government. And we also think that the state agencies do need to act as a conduit for the local units of government, in many cases for the receipt of federal funds. And we think there is a need for a time frame that allows the state agencies to act more quickly. And we think by eliminating the urgent approval provision, we could lose some federal funding to the state of Minnesota.
Thank you, Ms. Rayton. Representative Holberg, any response or comments to the testimony? Otherwise, we'll open it up to members.
Again, my purpose today is just to kind of put the bill out here, get some feedback, identify any issues. we're certainly willing to work on them. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions, address concerns if committee members have them. I don't know, there may be questions for testifier as well, so.
Thank you. Representative Abeler.
Well, thanks. This is an important thing to talk about. The challenge is really to get the objections upstream as far as they can be done. And maybe if there's a really rock-solid downstream obstacle, then the departments would be forced to engage with the legislators, even of differing philosophical views ahead of that. Where this happened, this issue came up in December. Senator Han in the Senate had an objection to some things more on process than on the content, and got pounded by the governor as being some terrible kind of individual, only to have the department call it urgent and just to run the process kind of over his body in the middle of the road, which seemed like a little not friendly. And so he was the villain, and he wasn't trying to cause harm to the groups. He was just trying to call attention to this process. So it's good. I appreciate Representative Holberg bringing this forward. And so the more that there can be a true dialogue in the policy setting that we think we do here, the better. So I support your efforts, and I'm glad the department is willing to make some moves. And maybe as you go forward, if there's some way even to have some information brought to the chairs of the various committees, minority and majority, as the funds are being applied for, that'll solve a lot of the downstream issue. And so that's my suggestion. And good luck to both of you, and thanks for what I hear as a collegial attitude on the part of the department about trying to find a way to work on this.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the testifier or to Representative Holberg, how many urgent requests? We've heard several mentions urgent requests. How many urgent requests have been made to the state legislature here in Minnesota overall, say, 15, 20-year period?
Representative, I don't have exact numbers, but I did, I was kind of looking through them in the last couple days to prepare for this testimony. And it looks like we do use the urgent request provision between about 5 and 10 times per fiscal year. And it's typically when a department is notified of funding on a shortened timeline where it needs to be deployed more quickly.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you. And so the money or the need for finances then, is it mainly the agency then asking finance to come up with some money to help them, or the means or the process by which they can maneuver through this situation, or is it more times federally that, as you mentioned, a federal requirement? Do we have the finances or the funds to meet the requests? Or is it basically to be able to accept federal funds that the urgent request is coming forward?
Ms. Rayton.
Representative, it's that the agencies don't have any authority to do the spending until it is approved through the LAC process, and we don't have funds to backfill it, and we don't have authority to backfill it while waiting for a legislative session to happen or a regularly scheduled review to happen. And so the urgent request provision is there so that there is some ability to gain that approval to spend.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you. And Representative Holberg, or to the testifier, how long is this provision that you're saying is being deleted, how long has this been in statute? And what did we do before we had this language in law?
Ms. Rayton.
I'm actually not sure, and I think probably Bill Marks would be better equipped to answer it. Sorry, Bill.
Mr. Marks, do you need a minute, or can you come? I think he needs a minute. Representative Anderson, any follow-on questions, or is that any other questions for the author or the testifier? Mr. Marks.
Mr. Chair and Representative Anderson and members, first, I'd say this language on urgent requests and so on has been here as long as I've been working with it. It's Section 3.3005 in the statute as far as federal money and expenditure review. It was first put in place in 1979. I don't know what shape or form it was at that time. If the urgent stuff was in there, we'd have to do some research on it. But it looks like this section on review of federal money has been there since 1979 in some form.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Representative Holberg, any final comments?
No, I would just be open to any comments or suggestions from committee members to this process. Hopefully, we can look at it with an open mind, knowing that sometimes we're with the governor and sometimes we're with the legislature and sometimes we're in the majority and sometimes we're in the minority, but that the process right now is rather cumbersome, unclear, and could use a little bit of revision.
All right, thank you, Representative Holberg and Ms. Rayton. And with that, I will
Recess.
we'll lay House File 2958 on the table, and we are in recess to the call of the chair.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.